Thanks, Jando. So when we look at the EU energy and climate targets and the EU target in terms of cohesion policies and the EU priorities for the new Commission, it is, when you put all this information together, it is clear that we need to phase out inefficient buildings from the European building stock. However, this is easier to say than to implement because the road to phase out inefficient buildings is bumpy. The first challenge that we face from our side as analysts is that the energy consumption data of buildings are unknown. We have the overall consumption of the building stock, and then it's difficult to go more in details. These data are utilities have this data, but these data are not made available. So setting baselines, these data are important to set baselines because it's the baseline that if we don't have the right baseline, we don't know exactly where we are going and we can go in the wrong direction. We could recommend to implement the wrong technologies, the wrong measures, which lock the savings potential later on. The second challenge that we face as analysts is that energy renovation costs are unknown as well. There is not transparency on that. To be able to do the analysis, to conduct the analysis that Chandor did, we had to extrapolate from few data available for only few countries to 28 member countries. This is another challenge. In terms of analysis and in terms of estimating the investment needs. So policymakers need to know how is the scale of the challenge. And then when we look more in details, if we make the assumptions that we have these two informations, so from analysis perspective, we can set the baselines, we can know how much savings we will get, and we can make an estimate, more accurate estimate of the investment needs. But then we face problem with the energy innovation companies. There are so many actors, and we don't have in all countries accreditation process or qualification process in place, implemented, that to make sure that we select companies with highly qualified to make sure that they will deliver very good work. And then we also have different actors intervening in the building sector, which makes the coordination of the renovation work that requires different expertises more complex and sometimes impossible. And that's why we need to bundle, to find a way to put all these companies and all these expertises together. But this is not always easy and not obvious in most countries. And the other challenge that we have is that as I said, 70% of the population is owner-occupier, and a large majority of these buildings are single-family houses. This means that we have small projects. And for financial institutions and different actors who have to renovate the buildings, small project means that we have more transaction costs. This means that the overall cost of the renovation will be higher. So we need mechanism to bundle these projects, to bundle small projects into larger ones. And then the deepness of the renovation is undefined. First, because we don't have the baselines. Second, because we don't have a clear picture of the overall building stock and what are the technologies already implemented. And this is the starting point to be able to define how deep we could go in order to avoid lock the savings potential. And from our review and analysis of the existing financial scheme and renovation programs in different countries, most of these programs are not evaluated, are not monitored. And in many countries, financing is provided without having as a requirement to have the evaluation, the post-renovation evaluation made. And to be able to overcome all these barriers that we have, and based on the already existing schemes in different member states, we combined all the good practices that we have been able to find in one scheme that we call market framework, that we think would allow for renovation of the building stock in different member states. And we find each element of this market framework in different member states, but not it doesn't exist as overall framework put together in any of the member states at this stage. And in this scheme, what is needed is, for example, risk-sharing pool, and that was also one of the recommendations of the IFIG, the finance group, to reduce the perceived risk of the energy renovation investment, the energy efficiency renovation investment, risk-sharing pool by putting together the already existing funding. So the funding are already there, but it's not yet put all together. This would reduce the perceived risk from financial institutions, and this doesn't exist yet. There are some experiences in some member states, but it doesn't exist in all member states. And the other parameter that is very important, the other actor that is very important, is what we call energy innovation facilitator. The energy innovation facilitator is needed because we have so many actors intervening and they have to intervene in the renovation of the building sector. And these actors need to be somehow coordinated, and there is also evaluation and checking that has to be done. And the on-bill financing, which is already used in some member states, not as developed as, for example, it is in the US. This to allow to pay for savings through, to pay for renovation through the savings, and this would solve at least two issues. First, the issue of the upfront cost. So the owners of the buildings, and as we have seen in most countries, most of them cannot afford the energy renovation. They will have anyway their buildings renovated because this renovation will be paid through the savings over time. This means we need a long-term contracting, and it will also solve in countries like Germany, where there is where the issue of split incentive is high, because the number of owners occupiers is the lowest one in Europe, because then the on-bill financing, if linked to the property and not to the individuals, which is currently the case in most of the existing financing schemes. So it doesn't matter if the owner of the occupier of who is the owner, who is the occupier of the building, because it's related to the property. And but the two main actors that are needed are the renovation facilitator and the risk-sharing pool to be able to create this energy innovation market that we are all hoping to have and we don't have yet. Overall, the EU Energy Innovation Plan will help, as Heinz said at the beginning, to meet the EU priorities. And we already have framework for each of our priorities. But to have the EU Renovation Plan, we need to combine the existing policy frameworks, keeping in mind that the target is to phase out from the EU building stock the inefficient ones. You will have more details on the report, and we are happy to answer your questions by email. We will take some of the questions now, but we are happy to answer later on any question or any clarification that might be needed.